The high-level general debate of the 77th session of the UN General Assembly gathers heads of states and high officials in New York for a fourth day. El Salvador authorities maintain a state of alert due to heavy rains affecting the country during the last 72 hours. And with high voter turnout concludes the first day of referendums in Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson regions to join Russia. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Speaking on behalf of the Palestinian people, President Mahmoud Abbas denounced Israel's campaign of seizing Palestinian lands to build settlements, forcing thousands of people out of their homes.
Launching a frantic campaign to confiscate our lands, to build settlements, to loot our resources, as if this land is empty and has no owners, exactly as it did in 1948. Israel is giving total freedom to the army and to the terrorist settlers who are killing the Palestinian people in broad daylight.
During his speech before the United Nations General Assembly, the Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Muhammad Shehbaz Sharif, expressed his country's concern about the numerous conflicts in the Middle East.
Mr. President, Pakistan is deeply concerned by the numerous conflicts across the Middle East, including in Syria and Yemen. We support all possible efforts to promote their peaceful resolutions. We call on Israel to put an immediate end to the blatant use of force and flagrant violations of human rights of the Palestinian people and the repeated desecration of the Holy Al-Aqsa Mosque. The only just, comprehensive, and lasting solution of the Palestinian question is the acceptance of a viable, independent, and contiguous Palestinian state with the pre-1967 borders and Al-Quds Al-Sharif as its capital.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance from St. Lucia, Philip Joseph Pierre, called for the immediate removal of the inhuman economic blockade against Cuba and the lifting of sanctions against Venezuela.
Continue to call for the reduction of tension and normalization of relations with our regional neighbors of Venezuela and Cuba. And in this regard, Mr. President, in keeping with the Charter of the United Nations on a people's right to self-determination and political independence, we once again call for the immediate removal of the inhumane economic embargo against Cuba. Given the devastating impacts of the sanctions on the Venezuelan people, coupled with the COVID-19 pandemic, and compounded by the expanding crisis of the world economy arising out of the war in Ukraine, let us also use this moment as a watershed for lifting the painful sanctions against the people of Venezuela.
The Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brown, denounced the brutal U.S. blockade against the people of Cuba.
The question is, what else needs to happen in order to force urgent action? So, Mr. President, even if some of the governments of the industrialized nations remain reluctant to curb greenhouse gas emissions for the sake of the most vulnerable globally, they should be motivated by the perils for their own people. At the end of the day, we are all in this thing together. And while SIDS will suffer more swiftly and greater, no nation will escape. A global, all-of-society response is required to effectively combat climate change. There's no other option. There's no other viable option. I therefore plead with all governments to act on the evidence and to do all in their power to curb greenhouse gas emissions to stop climate change.
The Premier also asked for an urgent response to climate change's challenges that are affecting not only small nations.
Embargo imposed by the United States that is hampering the Cuban people in their collective efforts to achieve economic and social development. This unjust embargo is seriously undermining Cuba's efforts to eliminate poverty and improve the living standards of its people. The government of Antigua and Barbuda urges the United States to immediately lift the 60-year economic embargo against Cuba and allow the 11 million Cubans an opportunity to be prosperous and a fair chance at achieving the Sustainable Development Goals.
The countries of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America People's Trade Treaty approved a joint declaration for the respect of the United Nations Charter as well as the respect for sovereignty and self-determination of the peoples. During the meeting led by Venezuelan Foreign Minister Carlos Faria, foreign and prime ministers of the member countries expressed their rejection of the coercive and unilateral measures against Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. The Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Rafael Gonsalves, urged to strengthen regional unity and act in coherence with the organization's vision. The 22nd meeting of the Political Council issued a declaration that seeks to shield South American nations. On his part, St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister Rafael Gonsalves said that as an alliance, Alba TCP must reflect and determine how to contribute to the maintenance of peace, prosperity, and security of the peoples.
The economy is currently going through a complex moment, which requires, more than ever, a profound reflection in order to determine whether we can contribute in a comprehensive manner to the maintenance of peace, prosperity, and security for all. And we must resort to the Charter of the United Nations, as well as to multilateralism, to continue in this quest for peace, progress, and security.
Nicaraguan Foreign Minister Denis Moncada said it is necessary to strengthen the unity of Latin America and the Caribbean and defend the United Nations Charter and the principles of international law.
It is necessary to continue building our American and Caribbean unity and solidarity, strengthening the common fronts for the defense of the Charter of the United Nations and the principles of international law, rejecting war and terrorism, collaborating in fraternal brotherhood to ensure that our region continues to be a zone of peace, progress, and development.
Let's take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. In Argentina, Vice President Cristina Fernández, in her own defense, denounced the irregularities in the process for the so-called Vialidad case. After almost an hour and a half presentation, the former president reviewed the national constitution and the powers granted to the president. Fernández exposed the inconsistencies of the accusation and the statements made by the prosecutors, which she described as lies. The former president denounced that not only the link between sectors of the judiciary and mechanisms made it possible to build a case without sufficient elements, and concluded with the statement that she lives in a permanent state of siege and without constitutional guarantees.
The incredible lies concocted by prosecutors Sergio Mole and Diego Luciani have been dismantled, and in addition to all of this, and I want to emphasize this, the arbitrary acts committed in this trial were brought to light. I would like to make a formal request to this court that at the end of the hearings, testimony be taken of each and every one of the lies the prosecutors said, in contrast to the documentary, expert, and testimonial evidence presented at this trial.
In El Salvador, authorities maintain the state of alert due to heavy rains that have hit the Central American country in the last 72 hours and left 7 dead. In this context, the Ministry of the Environment estimates that the atmospheric depression will become a tropical storm by the end of the week and will affect the entire Central American region. In view of this situation, the government suspended classes at national level, while civil protection elements are deployed in vulnerable areas due to landslides and floods. On Friday, Hurricane Fiona has hit the Bermuda archipelago with heavy rains and strong winds, and it is expected to advance towards the northeast coast of Canada. The U.S. National Hurricane Center reported that Category 4 Hurricane Fiona has sustained winds of over 215 km per hour and is moving at a speed of 20 km per hour. Bermuda authorities opened shelters and closed schools and offices, while the Prime Minister urged people to stay safe and to heed official announcements.
Pretty rough, not a lot of major damages. Some of the windows blew in where we were able to temporarily fix them, and but nothing much. This morning, very easy for me actually. Very windy outside. We had some minor damage to the premises, but nothing serious. Right? We had a slight little door blowout. A window blew in and out. That's about it.
In Germany, thousands of people staged the Friday for Future demonstrations as they demanded more climate action. Local authorities estimate that more than 22,000 people turned out in Berlin to demonstrate as a way to highlight their fears about the effects of global warming, raise environmental awareness, and demand more aid for poor countries affected by the consequences of the climate crisis. Alongside the German demonstrators, Friday for Future environmental activists also took to the streets in Jakarta, Tokyo, and Rome with slogans such as "We are concerned about the climate crisis and it's not too late." In Europe, the rise of the US dollar has pushed local currencies to historic minimums. The dollar's pace at record heights is pushing other currencies such as the euro and the British pound to the sidelines, reaching new multi-decade lows on Friday. Specialists point out that the situation has led to a relentless liquidation of those currencies based on the belief that their central banks are lagging behind the US Federal Reserve's commitment to control inflation at all costs, even at the price of an economic slowdown. And this Friday, 14 tons of hashish from Morocco were seized by Spain's civil guard and arrested 49 people as it smashed a major drug smuggling ring. The gang was the biggest operating in Spain, regularly bringing up to 20 tons of hashish a month from North Africa to the Iberian Peninsula. The smugglers were heavily armed, police said, because rival gangs commonly attempt to steal the drugs. The police operation began in December last year, when authorities became aware of the gang and some 400 police officers were involved. The gang was well organized, with separate groups in charge of loading high-speed motorboats, fuel supplies and food. The drugs were landed on the southern Spanish coast near Cadiz and along the river Guadalquivir. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the South. First day of referendums on accession to Russia of Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson regions concluded with high voter turnout. The chairman of the Donetsk Central Election Commission, Vladimir Vysotsky, noted that the turnout on the first day of voting exceeded 23% of the summoned voters. The Lugansk election authorities reported that by 8 p.m. local time, the turnout reached 21.97%, adding that 298,900 people exercised their right to vote. The Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs pointed out that the referendums comply with the international law and respond to the legal rights of its residents. The Central African Republic's top court on Friday annulled presidential decrees setting up a committee to rewrite the constitution, which had sparked fears Faustin Archange Touadéra was seeking a third term in office. In a legal setback for the president, the Constitutional Court declared that decrees are unconstitutional and invalid and noted the basic law could only be revised after the Senate has been set up. The 65-year-old president was first elected in 2016, then re-elected in a highly controversial poll in 2020, but the current constitution does not allow him to run again. The court also said that any referendum on revising the constitution had to be initiated by the president, but that he could not go against the oath he had taken at his investiture to refrain from modifying the number and length of his mandates.
The bar's fight is to guarantee the independence of justice. that the judges can make their decisions with regard only to the law without any pressure from either side. As far as what the public authorities are going to do in relation to this decision, I think that we are in the Republic and the members of this public authority are a part of this Republic and the law is applicable for everyone. I don't believe for a moment that the public authorities can take the risk of going against a court decision. That would be confirming that we are saying here. That is to say, the annihilation of judiciary power.
The bodies of the shipwreck that sank off Syria's coast this past Thursday returned to Lebanon this Friday. Around 150 people, mostly Lebanese and Syrians, were on board a small boat that went down on Thursday off the Syrian city of Tartus. At least 77 migrants drowned when a boat they boarded in Lebanon sank off Syria's coast, where 20 survivors were being treated, including 8 in critical condition, Syria's health minister said on Friday. It's one of the deadliest such shipwrecks in the eastern Mediterranean. Meanwhile, at the Arida border crossing between Lebanon and Syria, dozens waiting for bodies to arrive. In Afghanistan, a car packed with explosives blew up outside a mosque attended by Taliban members in Kabul, killing at least 7 people. The explosion occurred in front of Wazir Akbar Khan Mosque, close to the fortified former Green Zone that housed embassies and diplomatic headquarters. Taliban Interior Ministry spokesman Abdul Nafi Takor reported that at least 7 people were killed and 41 others wounded, including children. The mosque is mostly attended by senior Taliban commanders and fighters, while overall violence has significantly dropped across Afghanistan since the war ended with the Taliban's return to power. There have been regular bomb attacks in Kabul and other cities, some claimed by the terror group Islamic State. Earlier this month, 2 Russian embassy staff were killed in a suicide bombing outside its offices, the latest attack in the capital claimed by ISIS. This September 24th, teleSUR invites you to see a brand new documentary titled Alex Saab, a Kidnapped Diplomat. The audiovisual features testimonies from lawyers, experts, and family members of Alex Saab, including his wife Camila Fabri. All of them will reveal details never known before about the first kidnapping of a diplomat in the history of the world. It also compiles the actions taken by the U.S. government toward countries and individuals to ambush Saab in Cape Verde. Authorities in the island country imprisoned the Venezuelan high government official without an arrest warrant against him. Don't miss the documentary Alex Saab, a Kidnapped Diplomat, only on teleSUR. We have come to the end of this news program. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. And you can also follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.